we move on to do a preview of Matchday 9 Conmebol World Cup qualifiers. We're finally at the point after that last international window. We were halfway through with the Conmebol World Cup qualifiers. Now the second half of the Conmebol World Cup qualifiers will begin, and interesting games going all around. First of all, Bolivia taking on Colombia, and there's an interesting element with this game. Colombia's manager Nestor Lorenzo has reported essentially that he believes that the Bolivian national team is spying. He has came out with that. He accused them. That was the word. He accused Bolivia of spying ahead of the World Cup qualifiers. On Thursday at the Municipal Stadium El Alto, which is which is Bolivia's new national stadium. It holds less than the stadium at La Paz, but the altitude levels is even higher, so even more of that advantage that Bolivia really thrives on. And they took advantage of that atmosphere. Bolivia did in their last international window, where they had a massive international window. Entering the last international window, Bolivia found themselves really in a suffering position. They entered this last international window with only 3 points, and in the last international window they go and they beat a Venezuelan team 4-0, a Venezuelan team that reached the semifinal of the Copa America, or the quarterfinals of the Copa America. They won their group at the Copa America this summer, and then they beat Chile 2-1, and they did this away in Chile, which was even greater result in the fact that Bolivia historically really a poor team on the road in Conmebol. They really take advantage of that La Paz the altitude that they have, and they will have that advantage going up against a Colombian team who's quite frankly one of the best national teams in the world, in the most hottest form that a national team can find themselves in. They've been playing some amazing football. They just got done beating Argentina, the reigning two-time Copa America winners and World Cup and the reigning World Cup champions, and they beat them 2-1. And it's a team in really good form and really good rhythm. But Colombia, they're going to be going into Bolivia. The altitude is going to be 3 o'clock as well. Colombia kind of suffer, suffer a little bit of their own medicine in the fact that Colombia played that Argentina game early, probably on purpose, so they could wear out the Argentinian players. Now Bolivia taking advantage of their home crowd, their altitude with the hot sun. It's going to be really difficult. It's going to be a game that I'm very looking forward to. I'm going to tune into this game. I normally, when it comes to Conmebol World Cup qualifiers, I normally watch Brazil always, and then tune into an Argentina game or Uruguay game here and there. But I'm going to tune into this one because I want to see how Colombia handle the atmosphere, the altitude, the heat in this high pressurized moment, and if Bolivia can continue on their momentum, because Bolivia, they find themselves 9 points tied with Paraguay, who's 7th, and they're only a point behind 5th place Bolivia is. So because of last week's international window, you can have a really poor first 6 games, but in the last 2, those 2 wins, puts them right back into the race to qualify for the World Cup, especially with this new expanded format. 6 teams in Conmebol automatically go through. 1 gets a interconfederation playoff opportunity. Right now, Bolivia find themselves tied for that position to go to the playoff, and they're only a point behind, team, 5th and 6th place, which will automatically get you to. So Bolivia are still in it, and they're right in the thick of it. So that's going to be an interesting game. There you have Ecuador taking on Paraguay. Paraguay find themselves sitting right now with 9 points, tied with sitting on 9 points, tied with Bolivia. Again, only a point behind Venezuela and Brazil. Speaking of Brazil, Paraguay had that big win at home over the Brazilian national team. They want to continue off that momentum. Ecuador, they find themselves sitting fourth place. But again, they're only a point ahead of Brazil, Venezuela, and 2 points ahead of Paraguay and Bolivia that find themselves seventh and eighth. So it's all congested in there. And these sort of results are important. Ecuador, they're going to be playing this game at home as well in Kyoto. They need to take advantage of these games. You don't want to slip up in these games with direct competitors, because Paraguay, they're sitting in seventh place, 3 spots below Ecuador, but there's only a 2-point difference. So Ecuador, with a poor window, they can find themselves from fourth to eighth like that. So they need to take advantage of these games. Big game between those two coming up. Venezuela take on Argentina. Argentina had that last game disappointing result to Colombia, but quite frankly, they still been the best team in Conmebol. They're sitting pretty at the top, 18 points, 2 clear of Colombia. They find themselves 8 points clear for Brazil. It's just Argentina. They have this consistency with Lionel Scaloni, the way that they play. They have an approach, a consistent approach to them. Not always the most pretty of football, but they always get it done. They're playing against, now they're going away though to Venezuela at the Monumental de Maturin in Maturin, Venezuela. Venezuela had a good Copa America, but not the best international window. They had a good point with Uruguay at home, in which they're difficult. Venezuela is a difficult outfit to take on at Venezuela. But when they went to Bolivia in that altitude, they got comfortably beaten 4-0. So I'd like to see how Venezuela bounce back from only getting 1 point in that last international window, now taking on Argentina and Paraguay. That's gonna be I say that's gonna be an interesting game, but honestly, these are all gonna be interesting games. These are all gonna be very interesting games. Brazil take on Chile. Quite frankly, Chile is a bottom feeder right now in Conmebol World Cup qualifiers, and Conmebol in general. Chile is just not good enough. They're not at that level. They're way too old, and they're the worst team in Conmebol, if not the worst. They're really close to Peru, who's the one of those two teams. They're just both god awful, and in Brazil, not at their most brightest moment in terms of Brazilian footballing history. Not the best moment for them, but Brazil just has too much talent. They're much better, even though it's going away to Chile. Look, if Brazil get anything less than a comfortable victory in this game, serious questions need to be asked about Dorviel Jr. And if you're not taking care of these games, then serious questions needs to be asked about Brazil's World Cup hopes. Because they only find themselves 2 points away from being in a position where they don't qualify, and everything is that tightly congested. So you got to take advantage of the Chile and the Perus, who are Brazil's next 2 games in this window. It's almost comes at a perfect point for them to start building some momentum with getting the likes of Neymar back and build some momentum. So important game coming up for Brazil. Similar story with Uruguay and the fact that you're going up against a Peru team that's lack quality. Yes, Peru is at home, but Peru's the team on the bottom of Conmebol World Cup qualifiers. This game will be in Lima. But again, Uruguay just has too much quality, and we know the drama surrounding Uruguay now with Marcelo Bielsa. I'd like to see how everything shapes out in this international window.